Good morning, Rebekah. How are you? It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
This is a remarkable story, one which I expect many, many people did not know about. You have talked about your experience growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, including the experience of knocking on doors, being frightened that schoolmates might be the ones who answered. But you have a very painful story to tell, don't you, in this documentary tonight?
Yeah, I do. And I think I've realised that I've probably only just scratched the surface. You know, I think my story isn't unique, and there's going to be plenty of others, as have already come out, that will continue to come out. And, you know, I found this part of my life a bit of an obstacle, but I wanted to use this obstacle to create an opportunity to help other people that have been in, you know, similar situations, and yeah, just hopefully, you know, show that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
When you were 12 years old, Rebekah, and I know that this is something you're now speaking out about openly, so I don't want to be insensitive talking about it, but it's at the heart of your documentary this evening. You suffered sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. Now, the person who was responsible was not a Jehovah's Witness, but you feel like you were not able to speak out about it in a way where it was taken seriously or pursued. Why do you think that was?
I mean, this is something I have spoken about, maybe slightly scratched the surface, but I feel like it was because I was manipulated. It was the shame, the fear of being, you know, bringing shame onto my family. I was controlled, and ultimately I was scared of what the consequences of speaking out would actually do.
And you must have felt very isolated, because you tried to talk to your mum and that didn't work. There were at school or other family members. Was there anybody you felt you could reach out to, or did you feel you were handling this on your own?
Honestly, I felt like I was dealing with this myself. I felt like I've dealt with this myself literally my whole entire life. And speaking to some of the other amazing contributors during this documentary has helped me understand that, you know, I'm not the only one that this sort of thing has happened to. There's so many other people. And some of the contributors that you'll see in this documentary have been absolutely incredibly brave to come out and talk quite in detail about their harrowing experiences as well.
You described the psychological harm that was done to you as extensive. You made a suicide attempt at the age of 14.
Yeah.
You had a family row in the wake of what happened and the way that it was handled. You ended up homeless. I mean, how are you dealing now with the long-term effects of what you went through?
I get asked this quite a bit, actually. And the honest answer is, I don't know. It's one of these things that you use as a tool. You know, for me, I've created part of myself that is really strong now. I have a lot of barriers. I'm quite unemotional. I'm not a very emotional person. And I think a lot of that has to do with what I went through in my past. But I like to see this, like I said before, as, you know, it was an obstacle in my life, and I want to use my experiences to help other people.
The Jehovah's Witnesses are, you know, a relatively closed community. People keep themselves to themselves. They don't vote. They sometimes don't use other wider health services. You weren't participating in certain parts of schooling. I think everybody's always cautious about calling out communities. Nobody wants to look like they're being persecuting or accusatory. But when you think back now to your upbringing, did you feel as though you were in communities which were healthy and open and supportive, or is that something which you look back with fear and regret?
At the time, I was obviously still young. I didn't know any different. I didn't know what I know now. But looking back at my childhood, yeah, it was really different. It was. I felt isolated. I felt lonely. I was bullied quite badly as a child because we were made to feel different. We weren't allowed to be seen as the same as everyone else, the same as what Jehovah's Witnesses call worldly people. We had to stand out from everyone else and, you know, have really strong faiths. But yeah, I lost so much time in my childhood because of this religion, and, you know, it wasn't pleasant.
Do you feel that's what was responsible for the breakdown of your relationship with your mum? Because you still don't have a relationship with her, do you?
No, I don't have a relationship with my mum. No, the breakdown over the relationship with my mum was ultimately the abuse, and not being believed when you take something like that to one of your parents is the most harrowing experience. And, you know, the after effects of that led to me becoming a bit of a crazy, rebellious teenager. And, you know, looking back, it's not surprising.
You now have a very happy family life, of course, a blended family, a loving husband, and you also, you sort of enjoy many of the things you were not allowed to enjoy as a child. Particularly, we know Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays, don't celebrate Christmases. But of course, as anyone who knows from your Instagrams and social media and the pictures that you post, you revel in all of that now, don't you? I mean, Jamie says that he knows Christmas is coming because you've gone to the garden centre and every single light is up and inflatable reindeer is purchased.
I love Christmas, and I think it's about, you know, it's not for us. It's not about what's under the tree. That's not important. It's about creating memories for the kids and having special family time. And that's what's important to us, you know, and it's given our kids something that, you know, I never had growing up, and seeing how their little faces light up on Christmas morning or in the lead up to Christmas is just priceless.
Your children now have a very, very different experience in the family, but also going to school, the way they live their lives. When you look back now, what would you say to the teachers at school who weren't looking out for you enough, the family doctor, to your mum? What message would you give to wider society about how people like you should be better supported in future?
I think that's quite hard because I think people conceal things really well, and, you know, no one really knows what's going on behind closed doors. And as a teenager, I think you can look at a child's bad behaviour and just think they're just being a typical teenager. You know, you need to have a real look at why that person's behaving in the way that they do. But, you know, my advice to myself would have been just, you know, keep fighting. The truth will come out in the end, and, you know, never, ever, ever give up. And, you know, that's a really strong message throughout this documentary as well, that, you know, no matter how hard it can get, and for some it really does get hard, there's always that light at the end of the tunnel. Just sometimes you have to just look a bit harder to find it.
Rebekah, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Jehovah's Witnesses and Me airs tonight, 10 p.m, Channel 4. The Jehovah's Witnesses said in a statement that elders are directed to immediately report an allegation of child sexual abuse to authorities, even if there is only one complainant. They rejected the suggestion that being expelled from the religion contributed to suicide, and added courts have rejected the allegation that disfellowshipping and so-called shunning results in social isolation and discrimination, and it is simply misleading and discriminatory to imply that our religion is controlling. They also said they lack the information to comment on individual cases. But if you have been affected by any of these issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines. And I think the message is, you know, always talk to somebody you can trust.